Hi, my name is Sunny Chung. I'm curator at the Design and Architecture Department of M+.
And I'm Andrew Goodhouse. I'm an editor at M+.
Today we're going to be talking about these three fantastic objects from the My First Sony range.
So these objects were released by Sony in the late 80s as a line of electronics aimed at kids for like a younger audience. I think one of the interesting things for me especially is to look at the design of these products in terms of the consistent scheme of like primary colors and how this kind of invites you as you're using it to understand and explore the different functions.
The marketing collateral, which we see here for the cassette recorder, has this open window here which enables you to clearly see the product. They knew exactly what they were getting for their kids.
It's advertising that you can record your voice on a cassette, play it back, play your favorite music. I think maybe one of the most special things is with these sound pads you can drum along to the sounds, and then there's even like an animal setting, so you change the drum sounds to animal settings. It's especially exciting.
I mean, I think it's too small.
Yeah, you're a little big for it, maybe.
Just freestyling. Like you see here, this My First Sony badge, which is on all their products. It was obviously a conscious decision for Sony to build this idea of brand loyalty through adults purchasing. These are not marketed necessarily as toys, but as actual Sony products, like these quality products which are just encased in plastic. They didn't want to go into the toy business, but they knew that there's this idea of lifestyling a product.
I think that's also interesting to consider in terms of the Walkman. Sony originally released in 1979 and really put the company kind of at the forefront of consumer electronics in Japan and also internationally. Around 10 years later, we have this sort of kids version of the Walkman that somehow, as Sony was saying, comes with the kind of promise of Sony quality. That you become a Sony consumer as a kid and then eventually you get older and perhaps you start buying other Sony products.
It's also got radio, FM, AM radio. So obviously recognizing that a child's hearing is very delicate at the early stage, they put something in it called the AVLS. The AVLS was actually in the first version of My First Sony. It's really a case of an innovation happening in what's perceived as a toy, but something serious for future that adults can also use.
I think with all these products, what you're getting as a user is kind of like this idea that you can explore. There are different ways to interact with the product. You can play music, record music, add to music, following an interface that is very easy to use and very friendly.
They've definitely got this cohesive design language where they focus more on the red and the blue and the yellow. When they did market research, they discovered that in general, boys' toys seem to be black and yellow colour, and for girls at the time it was a kind of pinky purple. So they deliberately wanted to steer away from this idea of genderising the toys, which, if you think about it, in the sort of late 80s, 90s, really forward thinking for the company.
So we're here now looking at some other products from exactly the same time, more or less, late 1980s. And you can see we have three products here. One is sort of sound-based cassette playing, recording, but there's also a vacuum cleaner and an electric toothbrush. You could say kind of adult ideas of children's activities. The packaging is very inviting. I mean, you have this sort of robot logo. In this case, you have a picture of the vacuum cleaner. For kids who are still learning to read, you have the kanji written here, and then above it in smaller type, the hiragana. If you haven't learned the character yet, you can still understand how to pronounce it.
We noticed that here, if I turn this around a bit, you get these screws. And the idea is that you can unscrew these. So for a curious kid who perhaps may just want it all green, for instance, you could take two of these green panels, these modular panels, and put them together and have a completely green kit. And also to learn how to brush your teeth as well.
Yes, we have here the electric toothbrush body. There are some heads that you can place on there. Again, in the sort of Sanyo Robo colors, red and green.
These are two examples of how two companies, Sony and Sanyo, have approached children's products, from the Sanyo Robo range to the My First Sony, and the sort of diverse and different products that you can get.
Their design history obviously positioned within the design and architecture collection at M+, but also their material history. I mean, looking at these two sets of objects together, you really see a difference in the plastic. I mean, whereas My First Sony has this sort of shinier plastic, the Sanyo Robo series doesn't. As Sunny was saying, there's a corporate history that can be told in terms of the late 80s in Japan, but there's also obviously a design history and then a material history as well.